Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about my biggest mistake from the previous cycle because I see a lot of investors making the same exact mistake today as Bitcoin approaches its previous all-time high, and it all has to do with believing the current narrative and believing that what's happening right now is going to continue occurring. And it all starts in December of 2020 as Bitcoin was breaking its previous all-time high. My portfolio was 100% Bitcoin because I knew it would outperform altcoins in the bear market and in the early bull market. So as Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high, I had a shopping list of altcoins I was looking at and that I was planning to buy on the Bitcoin all-time high break because I had learned in my first cycle that once Bitcoin breaks its previous all-time high, that's when altcoins can start outperforming and start going crazy to catch up to Bitcoin, which tends to outperform in the beginning of the bull market. So I'm feeling great. I'm 100% allocated to Bitcoin. Altcoins are underperforming and I'm getting ready to rotate into altcoins. And then literally the week after the all-time high break, as I'm getting ready to start buying altcoins, the SEC comes out and charges Ripple and two of their executives with conducting 1.3 billion in unregistered securities offerings. And I wasn't really planning on buying XRP, so this headline in itself didn't faze me that much. But the narrative became the SEC is going to come after all of these altcoin projects, and this is going to be a Bitcoin only bull market because altcoins are going to be facing charges from the SEC, and US investors and big capital is going to be scared to buy them, and we're going to have a Bitcoin only bull market. And this ended up stopping me from buying altcoins until significantly later because I actually fell for that narrative. And now to some of you that have been around for a while, this seems incredibly obvious. Of course, if Bitcoin breaks new all-time highs and goes crazy, altcoins are going to do better and catch up to it. But I'm getting a lot of questions today, and I'm seeing a lot of Bitcoin maxis, especially on Twitter, saying that this cycle is going to be different because of the ETFs. Institutional capital is not going to buy altcoins, so we're not going to see the alt season we saw in previous cycles that was retail driven, because this cycle is going to be institutionally driven thanks to ETF inflows, and only one of the assets in this market has an ETF. And when you look at headlines, all they talk about is Bitcoin. Bitcoin breaks all-time highs and gets almost 800 million into BlackRock's ETF in a day. MicroStrategy is going to buy 700 million of Bitcoin. And if you didn't know any better, and if you were a new participant, especially after getting beat up the entire bear market and seeing a lot of your favorite projects underperform Bitcoin, you could fall for the narrative of this time is different. This is going to be a Bitcoin-led rally. Bitcoin will outperform because only Bitcoin has the ETF. And I am almost 100% certain there is no chance that we don't see altcoins significantly outperform Bitcoin once the all-time high is broken. And now let's talk about why this is. How can altcoins do well and keep up with Bitcoin if hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing into Bitcoin every day? And it's really just one simple question we have to ask ourselves. Who holds majority of the Bitcoin in circulation? Is it these ETFs, or is it whales and long-term holders and long-term accumulators and crypto natives that will rotate a portion of their Bitcoin profits into altcoins when the time is right? Now, I 100% agree. Institutional investors are not going to pile into altcoins. They likely continue buying Bitcoin, maybe buy Ethereum when it gets its ETF in May. But the way that altcoins are going to go crazy and rally hard is because all of this money in Bitcoin right now, I think it's well over $1 trillion, 1.4 trillion. Of course, not all of it is going to rotate into altcoins, but crypto native and crypto OGs and Bitcoin holders that still hold the majority of the Bitcoin in circulation and not these ETFs, they're going to start rotating 10%, 20%, maybe 30% of their profits into these smaller altcoins because they know after their experiences in previous cycles that altcoins have way more upside once the Bitcoin all-time high is broken. But of course, I ended up buying altcoins a lot later than I should have because I fell for the narratives being spread on Twitter and the altcoins were lagging up to that point. Still ended up doing well by buying them when I did, but I would have had an incredible cycle if I actually rotated into altcoins and bought them when I wanted to, which was the all-time high break, which is why I've been saying for weeks now, I understand that altcoins have been doing well. I understand a lot of you feel bad for me and feel like I'm missing out because I'm not holding a ton of altcoins right now. But really, the reason I'm not that concerned is in the last cycle, the best opportunities showed themselves once Bitcoin was above its all-time high, because that's when retail actually got interested and came back into the market. When Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high, Dogecoin was still under a penny. Solana was trading between $1 and $3 before running all the way to $260. And if you don't believe me, we can just add them on here. Let's add some of the best performers from the previous cycle. Let's do Solana on a new price scale. As you can see, Bitcoin breaks its previous all-time high in December, Total 3 breaks its previous all-time high in February, and Total 3 is just the entire market minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then look where Solana still is when Bitcoin was already above its previous all-time high. It was at $3, and Solana was on my radar at the time. Obviously, I wouldn't have thrown everything into it. It was too small of a project, but I didn't allocate to it when I should have, because I was worried about the SEC coming after these other projects, and I believed the narrative at the time, just like people today are believing the narrative that altcoins can't outperform because ETFs and Bitcoin specifically are getting all the inflows. And it's the same thing if you look at other projects as well. We can hide Solana just so this doesn't end up being a mess, and we can add Dogecoin, which I'm sure all of you are very well aware of what Dogecoin did in the previous cycle. It's under a penny when Bitcoin is above its previous all-time high, and it does like over 100x, maybe it did a 150x or something. But this started after the all-time high was broken. And finally, last but not least, another outperformer that was on my radar and that I ended up buying a little bit later than I should have was Matic. As you can see over here, it's trading at a penny as Bitcoin breaks its all-time high. By the time the bull market finishes, it's at $2.80, a 280x. And that's why I'm not really concerned with missing a lot of the altcoin outperformance happening today. I still think the best performing projects this cycle have most likely not even launched yet. Of course, some of the existing things will do well as well, and I hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana specifically because I consider them low risk blue chips, to where we, even if we have a very large pullback here or Bitcoin struggles at its previous all-time high resistance, I feel fine holding these through a drawdown because I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. But once we get that close above the previous all-time high, that's the maximum risk reward opportunity, in my opinion, where you can rotate your cash or even rotate some of your Bitcoin and Ethereum into altcoins, because they tend to lag Bitcoin until that all-time high break occurs. And just think about it. If you're a retail participant joining the market today, are you excited about buying Bitcoin at 69,000 or 70,000 or 75,000 and needing it to go to 150K for you to double your money? Or are you going to go right into the newest, shiniest altcoin with the best narrative and buy that instead because you feel like you already missed Bitcoin in terms of short-term potential now that it's already at 1.4 trillion in market cap? And those are the reasons why I've been calmly sitting on my hands waiting for the weekly close above the previous all-time high. I know there's so much anxiety being spread out there about missing the cycle, and it's already too late, and you have to all in altcoins right now with leverage to make up for lost ground. But that's a great way to lose all of your money by getting liquidated because you're trying to catch up to the gains you already missed out on. So for me, the plan remains the same. Let's get a weekly close above 69,000 for Bitcoin, and then I will start allocating to altcoins and talking about them on the channel and just sharing whatever I'm doing like I have done up to this point. Would it have been great to be in altcoins already? Sure, but I want to wait until Bitcoin gets that all-time high break, and I want to see what the hottest and most exciting narratives are once that break occurs, instead of trying to predict it in advance. Because a lot of people that bought altcoins in the last bear market thinking they would do well in the new cycle got significantly outperformed by newer and more exciting narratives, whether it was Dogecoin and Elon Musk or the new L1s like Solana and Avalanche. You couldn't have seen those narratives coming during the bear market when everything was still under development and those narratives haven't emerged quite yet. And of course, there's already some exciting narratives now. There's gaming, AI, but I still think there's going to be a lot of new projects launching that aren't even available yet. And I'm going to be looking out for those once we get the all-time high break. So for now, we'll just wait and see if we do end up getting a full-on bull market once Bitcoin closes above the previous all-time high. I do still think Ethereum outperforms it like we've been saying for months now. And I do think Solana outperforms Ethereum and Bitcoin because I don't think this time is different if we do end up getting this new all-time high and this full-on bull market. And of course, for that bull market to occur, we need these ETF inflows to remain strong. We had 650 million on March 5th, which is really solid. I think that was 2 days ago. And then yesterday we had another solid day at 330 million. And as long as these can continue and Bitcoin gets that break above all-time high, I think retail money is going straight into altcoins. And there's still very solid narratives. We talked about the record BlackRock inflows. MicroStrategy had so much demand for their stock convertible notes that they're doing 700 million instead of 600 million, something they would have never been able to do in a bear market. But there's quite a bit of demand for Bitcoin proxies right now. And of course, when the market is doing well, you also see politicians start to switch to being on crypto's side because nobody likes it when politicians are fighting against crypto when the market is going up. That's why you saw all of these politicians come out after the FTX collapsed, because so many people were mad about crypto. It was popular for politicians to be against it. But now that prices are up and everybody is celebrating, no politician wants to get in the way of that. And we also see the SEC kind of fighting between themselves, saying that they've been too ambiguous. And some people in the SEC are for crypto, some aren't. But I think they're going to have a very hard time regulating the space aggressively when the market is doing this well, because all of the retail investors involved will be very upset if the SEC ends up causing the market to crash by coming after these projects like they did in December of 2020. We did also see a great leverage flush recently, over $1 billion, which is funny because the morning of that flush, we talked about open interest being incredibly elevated and funding being incredibly high. And of course, when that happens, it's really easy for the market just to quickly go the other way and liquidate everybody who was getting too greedy with leverage, which is why I still think the hardest thing to do in a bull market is to be patient and sit on the positions you believe in, because it's so easy to see your favorite YouTuber shill you leverage trading websites, or you see somebody on Twitter making 100 times the money you are, and it's so easy to get greedy and pile into leverage and just end up losing your money before Bitcoin even breaks above its previous all-time high. And like I said in my last video, a lot of people lost 20, 40, 60% of their funds trying to break out trade Bitcoin on leverage, and it just kept chopping them up over and over and over again. By the time we actually got the break to new all-time highs, they had lost a lot of their capital leverage trading, trying to catch that breakout. And you're already seeing this now with the amount of leverage that was washed out 2 days ago on that correction off of the all-time high attempt. So for now, we remain patient, still sitting on what I think are pretty low risk positions. They continue to go up relative to my cash position. Solana, especially recently, has finally been moving, and it would be great to see a weekly close above the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement. It's been lagging quite a bit recently and cooling off after that initial rally, but I don't know if I would really add any exposure at these prices. I'm happy with my lower entries. And we do see Ethereum outperforming recently as well. And what's especially incredible to me is even with billions of dollars of inflows coming into these Bitcoin-only ETFs, somehow Ethereum has been able to keep up with Bitcoin. And this is incredibly bullish in my opinion for Ethereum, because it doesn't even have its ETF yet, and it's able to keep up with Bitcoin, which is getting all of these inflows that Ethereum is not. So it tells me that Ethereum will outperform this cycle. Once Bitcoin breaks above its all-time high, that's when Ethereum tends to accelerate. and a Ethereum spot ETF deadline in May might even be more fuel to that fire. But with Solana being a cheaper asset to use, especially for retail traders, I still think Solana outperforms Ethereum this cycle. I think big money will buy Ethereum on these new ETF products, and I think whales will use Ethereum, but I think new participants who don't want to pay $100, $200 for a transaction, and I know they're cheaper on L2s, but that's still a lot of complexity for a new participant. I think these very cheap Solana fees and all the meme coin speculation on Solana is going to drive a ton of attention, just like Binance Smart Chain did in the previous cycle. I think Solana has stolen that narrative this time around, and I think it's a perfect hedge. Ethereum is kind of the more established, more decentralized, more expensive chain, and Solana is a little bit less decentralized, but significantly cheaper transactions. And I think retail will go straight to trading NFTs and meme coins on Solana because they can't afford to pay $100 per transaction on Ethereum. And finally, we have Bitcoin dominance still struggling. I would still love to see this break higher. In the previous cycle, when Bitcoin broke above its previous all-time high and doubled in about a month or two, we ended up seeing a huge squeeze higher in Bitcoin dominance, and it actually reached 70%. And that was the perfect setup for that money to then flow into altcoins and Bitcoin dominance to collapse very quickly as all of that money funneled into altcoins. And that's why you see total 3, all of the cryptos minus Bitcoin and Ethereum, go absolutely vertical once Bitcoin dominance rolled over aggressively. We haven't seen that yet, so I still think there's a lot of opportunity to be had in altcoins once Bitcoin dominance breaks down. But for now, I would still love to see it go higher. 56 to 58% would be great. 60% would be amazing, because that's so much capital and so much money in Bitcoin that could then flow to altcoins. Once Bitcoin's all-time high break move is completed, we can see that rotation like we did in the previous cycle. And that's why I watch Bitcoin dominance closely. It hasn't done much recently. It's been chopping since about October of last year. But when this does break to the upside, I think that will be the maximum opportunity moment to rotate some cash and Bitcoin into altcoins to ride that Bitcoin dominance wave back down. And of course, although there's a lot of opportunity, we do still have Bitcoin trading in a very vertical parabola here. So I am keeping a very close eye on macro. These rate cuts continue to be pushed back. Of course, we're going to monitor this as we go forward. As of right now, I think the market is expecting 3 to 4 rate cuts this year. That may end up not happening, and we could have a macro surprise that could get in the way of our bull market this time around. So even though I have exposure that I'm happy with, I'm still keeping cash on the sidelines to wait for this all-time high breakout, and I'm still keeping a close eye on rates and a close eye on inflation data, unemployment data, and I think we're getting an unemployment print tomorrow. And of course, we have another FOMC meeting this month, and these are going to be incredibly important to monitor, because I still think there's a small risk that maybe we will see something similar to 2019, where Bitcoin is able to rally aggressively during the Fed pause, but tops as the Fed is cutting rates because something breaks in the economy, causing risk assets to sell off and causing the Fed to start trying to play catch up by cutting rates aggressively. But by then the damage is already done and it's already too late. And although we've seen this cycle front run the halving and things to occur a lot earlier than previous cycles, I still think there's macro risks out there, and I still think it's important to be somewhat conservative until we see the breakout confirmation above the previous all-time high, and that's why I haven't aggressively bought altcoins yet. But anyway, let me know what you expect. Maybe share your biggest mistake that you've had in a previous cycle, or maybe even this cycle. I still think the all-time high break is obviously what everybody is watching, and we will see how it plays out. But for now, we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. But anyway, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.